Shalom, shalom, shalom lakam, which is peace unto you all. Ha'erab tawab la'adam za'achyakam yawam manamachakadal Charlotte, which is good evening. This is your brother Yawan from the GMS camp in Charlotte. Nachamatam kaya ha'malakata shamayim kwara. Repent ye, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Call halayim la la banawa Yahweh bahasham Yahweh shai bahasham rucha hakodash. Wamashana la zakwanim na wamalakim sharucha gadal, which is all praises to our Father Yahweh, which means he exists. Bahasham, in the name Yahweh Shai, delivers and double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone. Zabara Ashiat. This is Genesis chapter 11, and we'll get verse 1. And it says universal language. And it says Babal, and it says confusion, which it says universal language because essentially, the whole earth was of one speech, as it's going to get into in verse 1. But then it says Babal, which that goes into the name for confusion, because the Lord essentially dispatched the Alahayim, to essentially confound the languages of those that was in the that was essentially building up that tower. But nevertheless, continuing on, this is Genesis chapter 11 and verse 1, and it says the whole earth was of one language and of one speech. All right, let's get this word for language. And it says Shapa, and it says lip language, and it says we'll go into this. Let me see. I'm actually get a quick precept. This is Bon Sirach chapter 17, and we'll get verse 5, and it says they received the use of the 5 operations of the Lord, and in the 6th place he imparted them understanding, and in the 7th speech, and interpreter of the cogitations thereof. All right, so going back, we got that word for language, but it says in of one speech. Let's get this word for speech. And it says dabar, and it says speaking utterance. All right, and it says words, so everybody had, they were all of one understanding of the words that they were using. All right, going back to Bahalashwan Kwadash, speaking in the holy tongue. All right, but I want to go back to this precept right here. Bon Sirach 17 and verse 5, it says they received the use of the 5 operations of the Lord, and this is essentially going into the what's known as the census. It says in the 6th place he imparted them understanding, going into the righteous lineage. The righteous lineage ultimately got the understanding, the breath. And it says in the 7th speech and interpreter of the cogitations thereof. Now speech, again, the whole earth was of one speech. All right, so everybody spoke the same thing, you see, but speech is an interpreter of the cogitations. Ultimately, cogitations are what we think, so speech is how essentially we can translate what we're thinking into words that other people can understand, So going back to the scripture right here, Bara Ashiat, Genesis chapter 11 and verse 1, it says, and the whole earth was of one language and of one speech. So everybody essentially, the nations mentioned in Genesis, the 10th chapter, they essentially could understand each other. All right. And which at a certain point in time, Genesis 11 and Genesis 10 happened concurrently or during the time of Palag. But let's read into this and then we'll go to that. But this is, let me see, hold on. This is Genesis 11 and verse 2. It says, and it came to pass as they journeyed from the east that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. And they said one to another, go to, let us make brick and burn them thoroughly. And they had brick for stone, and slime had they for mortar. And they said, go to, let us build us a city and a tower, whose top may reach unto heaven, and let us make us a name, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth. And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the children of men builded. And the Lord said, behold, the people is one, and they have all one language. So they ultimately understood each other. They had ultimately their plans, what they was thinking was it was free course. All right. They essentially could conspire together and do what they wanted to do. All right. Verse 6, and the Lord said, behold, the people is one, and they have all one language. And this they begin to do. And now nothing will be restrained from them, which they have imagined to do. Go to, let us go down. You see, because the Lord dispatched the Alahayim. Go to, let us go down, and there confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord scattered them abroad from thence upon the face of all the earth, and they left off to build the city. Therefore is the name of it called Babal, because the Lord did there confound their language of all the earth. Because the Lord did there confound the language of all the earth, and from thence did the Lord scatter them abroad upon the face of all the earth. So everybody was speaking in the Hebrew tongue, what's known as the Hebrew. you know, and it's synonymous. The Hebrew is synonymous with the Holy Tongue, the Lashwan Kwadash, Halashwan Kwadash, the Holy Tongue. All right, but reading it again, verse 9, it says, therefore is the name of it called Babal, because the Lord did there confound the language of all the earth, and from thence did the Lord scatter them abroad upon the face of all the earth. So again, at a certain point in time, everybody was speaking the same thing, the same language. Everybody understood each other, but the Lord essentially dispatched the Alahayim, the powers. All right. And the languages was confounded. And this happened during the time of Palag right here. This is Genesis 10 and verse 25. And it says, and Ibar, and unto Ibar, we'll start at verse 22. Because it was three nations. All right, we'll read from here. Genesis 10 and verse 1, it says, now these are the generations of the sons of Nawach, Noah, Sham, Cham, Wayapat, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. All right, Sham, all right, ultimately goes into Sham goes into the righteous lineage, because the Lord dealt with was dealing with Noah. All right, and the righteous lineage after that was Sham. All right, which goes into which means name or memorial. All right, going back to this right here, we'll come back to that. But this is Genesis chapter 9 and verse 27. And it says, the Most High shall enlarge Japheth, because Japheth's name is Yapath. And Yapath means to be enlarged. All right, Yapath means to be enlarged, or it says open, because it says expansion, open, because if you look at the land that Japheth got, he had, Japheth was the first Greeks, so they was the first ones to be in Europe. They was the first ones to essentially have Europe, from Europe, what's known as Europe today, all the way to present day Russia. They had all that land. That's why it says the Most High shall enlarge Yapath, because he had all that land, and he shall dwell in the tents of Sham, and Canaan shall be his servant. Now, Canaan was the descendant of Ham, in which Canaan was cursed, all right, because what his father had did, he had looked upon Noah's nakedness, all right, so he was cursed, but his father, right here, going to verse 22, it says, and Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father and told his two brethren without. So they had Japheth and or Shem and Japheth had covered up Noah, while Ham just looked upon Noah, so Canaan was cursed, all right, for what his father had did, but just the point that the Lord was dealing with Sham, all right, because from Sham it went over to as we're reading right here, Genesis 10 and I'll start at verse 1 again. It says, now these are the generations of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and unto them were sons born after the flood. So each nation has a story of the flood, but these three, from these three, they essentially repopulated the earth, and this gives a detailed synopsis as to their descendants. But reading down Genesis 10 and verse 22, it says, the children of Sham, verse 21, it says unto Sham, and which right here, it says verse 20, in which at different points of the list, okay, these are the like right here, verse 5, by these were the isles of the Gentiles divided in their lands, everyone after his tongue, after his families, and their nations. All right, so again, Genesis 11 happened during the time of Palag. That's where everybody had their respective lands, languages, and so on and so forth. So Genesis 10 and verse 21, it says, unto Sham also the father of all the children of Ibar, the brother of Yapath the elder, even to him were children born. All right, it says, skipping down to verse 22, it says, the children of Sham, Elam, and Ashar, and Arphaxad, and Lud, and Aram. And the children of Aram, Uz, Hul, and Gether, and Mash. And Arphaxad begot Salah, and Salah begot Ibar, and unto Ibar were born two sons. The name of one was Palag, for in his days was the earth divided, and his brother's name was Yaquatan. All right. So during the time of Palag, that's essentially where Genesis 11 takes place. Let's get this in the NLT. NLT, it says, Ibar had two sons. The first name was Palag, which means division, for during his lifetime, the people of the world were divided into different language groups. His brother's name was Yaquatan. All right. So going back, Genesis chapter 11. All right. Again, the whole earth was of one speech. That's why we can see in different languages All languages is just different broken forms of Hebrew, you know, and that's why we can see different traces of the language. So I want to get an example. I get an example, but we got the word for Ibar. All right, so it says super. All right, which the word super means, you know, magnificent, you know, grand, you know, big, and a certain type of degree of measure. So it says super. Etymology, word forming element of Latin origin, meaning above. Above also is broken Hebrew. Over is also broken Hebrew. Super is broken Hebrew. And place of position also in manner, degree, or measure. Over, beyond, from Latin super. Adverb, preposition above, over, on the top, beyond, besides, in addition to. This is from super, variant form of root uper. All right, over. So when we read in this right here, it says over. Now let's go down right here. It says it might also be the source of Sanskrit upari, uperi, over, above, beyond, Greek hyper. If I'm not mistaken, it does go into this. All right, but it says Latin, or excuse me, Latin super, above, over. It says Old English ofer, over, German uber. All right, and this should sound familiar, you see, because what does reading these right here says the definition of these: over and across. All right, and this says Uber. What does Uber do? With the Uber, you say, hey, I need a ride, you know, take me over here, you know, take me across here, you know, I need to go over here, to travel over here beyond the place where I'm at, you know, because they ultimately got that from this word right here, as we read right here, Genesis 10 and verse we'll skip down to verse 25, and it says Eber, which when you go into Eber, it's Ibar, Bahalashwan Kwadash. All right, in the Holy Tongue will be Ibar. All right, now going back right here, it says Ibar, the region beyond. All right, so Ibar says region beyond or across. It says region across. All right here it says to pass over or by or through. It says to pass over, cross over, to pass beyond, to traverse. All right, traverse simply means just to travel. It says travel across or through, move something back and forth or sideways, travel over, across, extend across. All right. It says go in, advance, pass along, travel, to pass away, you know. So when we read these, all right, again, starting from right to left, that first character right there is going to be a I. The next one is a ba, and the next one is a ra, with that last a dropping off. So it would just be I bar. All right, so going back to this right here, these derive from the Hebrew word ibar, because, all right, it says over and across. All right, it's the same right here. When we go into this right here, it says to pass over, by, or through. It says to pass over, to cross over, to march over. All right, all of these are derivatives of the Hebrew word ibar. All right, when we see words like above comes from over comes from ibar. You know, ibar means the region beyond, you know, beyond in time, you know, because when we go to those that are descendants from Ibar, well, they kept the customs and the traditions of our forefathers, of the righteous lineage. All right. So going back, it says it says super. Now if we take off that S, it would just be Uper. All right, and with that P, it would just be a B. All right, there's no U's in the ancient Hebrew. That would be an I. All right, and the two main characters in super, or excuse me, the two main characters in the word for super is P and R, and those would just be changed to a B. The P would be a B, and there's no E's in Hebrew either. So it would just be, that would be bar. All right, and that U would be I. It would be I bar, because to pass over or to go beyond and place or position you. If you say, hey, if you call an Uber, hey, I need to go over there, I need to go beyond where I'm at right now. All right, it shows it has a relation, and it shows that it derives from the ancient Hebrew word I bar. All right, so let me actually go to this right here. All right, it says Ibar, says the crossing over or passing through a land or water to gain access to the side beyond. All right, and I'm gonna actually go up to the two characters that it derives from. All right, and it says bar. It says the plant families of grains such as wheat and barley have a cluster of seeds at the top of the stalk called heads. These grains were used for food for both man and livestock. The pictograph bayat is a picture of a tent, but also represents the family which resides inside the tent. The ra'ash is a picture of a head. Combined, these have the meaning of family of heads. All right, and this again, the Hebrew words, they tell a story. You see, so when we go into this right here, let's get Genesis chapter 12, and we'll get verse 1, and it says, "Now the Lord had said unto Abram, Get thee out of thy country and from thy kindred and from thy father's house unto a land that I will shew thee." And Abraham, Abraham, was known as Abram the Hebrew. You see, because he kept the customs of our forefathers. You see that, but then also, he had traversed over, the river Euphrates. That was a picture. That was a story. That was a fulfilling of prophecy. Genesis 12:1, it says, "Now the Lord had said unto Abram, Get thee out of thy country and from thy kindred and from thy father's house, from thy father's house unto a land that I will shew thee, and I will make of thee a great nation, and I will bless thee and make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. And I will bless them that bless thee, and I will curse him that curseth thee. And in thee shall all families of the earth be blessed." So Abram departed as the Lord had spoken unto him, and Lot went with him. And Abram was 75 years old when he departed out of Haran. And Abram took Sarai his wife, and Lot his brother's son, and all their substance that they had gathered, and the souls that they had gotten in Haran. And they went forth to go in the land of Canaan, and into the land of Canaan they came. So going back to that word bar, all right. Going back to that word for bar, it says the plant families of grains such as wheat and barley have a cluster of seeds at the top of the stalk called heads. These grains were used for both food for both man and livestock. The pictograph is a picture of a tent, but also represents the family which resides inside the tent. All right, so the family that was inside the tent, or Abraham, you essentially leading those that he took with him, are consisting of Sarai his wife, or Lot, Sarai his wife, and then the souls that was mentioned in Genesis the 12th chapter. It was a family of heads. All right, so it says combined these have a meaning of family of heads. Now let's skip down to where it says Ibar, and it says right here. It says the crossing over or passing through a land or water to gain access to the side beyond. Abraham, he kept the customs of our forefathers. He's of the righteous lineage. He was of the righteous lineage in his time. All right. And he crossed, the river Euphrates to get to the what is known as the land of Canaan, which is present day Yashar Allah. So it says the crossing over or passing through a land or water to gain access to the side beyond. It says cross over, to pass from one side to the other, to go across a river or through a land, to transgress in the sense of crossing over. All right, it says here's more examples. All right, it says Ibar says other side, as being across from this side. Edenics, which Edenics goes into the study of words, because scholars understand that all words come from the ancient Hebrew. So it says over. Over derives from Ibar. All right, forward also derives from Ibar. If you exchange the it says with the exchange of the F and the B. So if you exchange the F and forward, and you put a B right there, and you take off that D, it would just be B-O-R. All right, and then you put the I in front of the B, that would be Ibor, and there's no O's in the ancient Hebrew, so that would be A, would be Ibar. All right, so it says ferry. All right, ferry, when you, what does a ferry do? All right, they had a ferry in my hometown, and it would take you from one city, and it take you to the next city across this river. And a ferry, it allows you to cross from one side to the next. That's essentially what Ibar means. And how they got the word for ferry, they added the F. All right, and you take off the F, you put a B. All right, then you have berry. All right, you take off that Y, you get B-E-R-R. You take off one R, you get B-E-R. All right, you put the I in front of the B, you get Iber. All right, and that should sound familiar with Iberia, but going back to this word right here, it says beer, and you have the I beer. It's no ease in the ancient Hebrew, so it'll be Ibar, because the ferry ultimately allows you to go from one side of that river to the next, or to cross in whatever means and traverse. All right. So in which it's spiritual that the word for Ibar, all right, to say the language, it will be Ibar Yah, which is the Hebrew. All right. So Let's see. Bear with me. All right, this is Genesis chapter 17 and verse, let me see. Genesis 14 and verse 13, it says, "And there came one that had escaped and told Abram the Hebrew, for he dwelt in the plain of Mamre, the Amorite, brother of Eshcol, and brother of Aner, and these were confederate with Abram." So Abram was known as a Hebrew, you see, because he kept the customs of the customs of the past and the traditions, you see. But then also, ultimately going into Hebrew, he ultimately he traversed over that land. He essentially was sent on the mission to go into the Holy Land. So I want to get a couple more precepts, and that'll be it. Right here it says Ibar Yah, and it says one from beyond right here. One from beyond. It says patronymic from Ibar. And it says descendant of Ibar. He also, he was a descendant of Ibar or Eber. All right, he kept the customs of our forefathers. All right. Right here going back, it says one from beyond, from the other side. It says probably in Hebrew tradition, it says from beyond the Euphrates. So he did ultimately go beyond the Euphrates, you see, but then also he kept the customs of our forefathers. All right, let's go in here. It says Ibar Yah, and it says, let me see. It says, the land beyond the Euphrates, whence Ibar Yah, a stranger come from the other side of the Euphrates, where it is well rendered by the LXX. This word differs from Israelites, and the latter was the patronymic derived from the ancestor of the people, which was used amongst the nation itself, and there only this was regarded as appellative applied by the Canaanites to the Hebrews. But pretty much the point, Abraham was the progenitor of the Israelites, all right, or one of the forefathers of the Israelites, you see, and he was also known as Abram the Hebrew, you see, because he ultimately derived from Eber. He kept the traditions, and then also he traversed over that journey that the Lord essentially placed him upon. All right. But just wanted to get some more precepts on the language. Let's get Isaiah Yeshaya chapter 19 and verse, let me see, verse 18. It says, "In that day shall 5 cities in the land of Egypt speak the language of Canaan and swear to the Lord of hosts. One shall be called the city of destruction." Now the language of Canaan, all right, was the Hebrew. All right, and then also the actual Canaanites, they spoke a dialect of Hebrew. That's why a lot of times when we go into the like Google and we type in the ancient Hebrew, a lot of times it'll say ancient Hebrew, Paleo Hebrew, and sometimes it'll say Phoenician. But it really goes into ancient Hebrew. It's a derivative of ancient Hebrew. All right. So continuing on, let's also get Judges chapter 12. And we'll get verse 1, and it says, "And the men of Ephraim gathered themselves together and went northward and said unto Yapatah, Wherefore passest thou over to fight against the children of Ammon, and didst not call us to go with thee? We will burn thine house upon thee with fire." And Yapatah said unto them, "I and my people were at great strife with the children of Ammon, and when I called you, ye delivered me not out of their hands. And when I saw that ye delivered me not, I put my life in my hands and passed over against the children of Ammon, and the Lord delivered them into my hand. Wherefore then are ye come up unto me this day to fight against me?" And Yapatah gathered together all the men of Gilead and fought with Ephraim. And the men of Gilead smote Ephraim, because they said, "Ye Gileadites are fugitives of Ephraim among the Ephraimites and among the Manassites." And the Gileadites took the passages of Yarden before the Ephraimites, and it was so that when those Ephraimites which were escaped said, "Let me go over," that the men of Gilead said unto him, "Art thou an Ephraimite?" If he said, "Nay," then said they unto him, "Say now Shabaloth," which says Shibboleth. And he said Sabaloth, that says Sibboleth, for he could not frame to pronounce it right. Then they took him and slew him at the passages of Yarden, and there fell at that time of the Ephraimites 42,000, which that's an example of Jake essentially warring and being under the curses, you see. But this serves as an example of you know, how the language how was a different dialect of the Hebrew. All right, because right here it says Shabbalat, all right, which that goes into a flowing stream, ear of grain, head of grain as growing cluster. All right. And it says branch, a stream. It says an ear of corn. Now we'll go back to this right here where it says Sabalat or Sibalet. It says an ear or of grain or wheat. All right, then right here it says in the dialect of the Ephraimites, you know, so that essentially served as a dialect of Hebrew. It was like a smaller or a like a sub derivative or dialect. All right, so let's also get this. This is Zephaniah chapter 3, and we'll get verse 9, and it says, "For then will I turn to the people a pure language." All right, and pure goes into unadulterated, unmixed. When we look at all these different other, when we look at all these languages today, all right, they're very mixed. All right, and let's get some examples right here, because all of this right here that we see on the screen right here is broken Hebrew. All right, specifically going into this word right here, super, uper, over, above, beyond, or not beyond, over. Well, beyond would be, you know, broken Hebrew too, but over, specifically over, uper, super, above. All of those are derivatives of the Hebrew word ibar. All right, those serve as an example of derivatives of the Hebrew word ibar, and how, you know, is very adulterated. All right, because there are no U's, there are no E's in the Paleo Hebrew. All right, so also is no V's. That V will ultimately be a B or a ba. All right, so going back, it says, "For then will I turn to the people a pure language, that they may all call upon the name of the Lord to serve him with one consent." All right, which that ultimately starts on this side. And the main part of the language is the Lord's name. You see, everything, you know, will be restored in the kingdom. All right, when we're ultimately, in the kingdom, when we're repaired, when we're restored. All right, and when we're ultimately on top, when we have that preeminence, you know. But yeah, just wanted to go into that because, you know, the Lord is, doing a beautiful work, with this truth. All right, and in this truth, we ultimately have the holy language back, you know, which again, the most important part of the language is the Lord's name. All right, because that's ultimately how that comprises of how we're able to serve the Lord, you know. So I just wanted to go into that. Adonai Tazah. Zabanaya Palu as well. That was a beautiful edification to the spirit. Adonai Tazah. Atam Yashlai Latawab as well. You all have a good night. Wa Shalom Lakan, which is peace unto you all. Hey, Shalom, Shalom.